Welcome to Lockbox, a podcast providing real estate professionals with action items for success. My name is Jeffrey Brogger, and I'm going to be your host. I'm the founder of two real estate marketing and tech companies, STEEZY.Digital and realnurture.io. In this podcast, you'll learn from top 1% real estate and mortgage brokers the exact secrets to their success. Welcome to Lockbox. Welcome to Lockbox. My name is Jeffrey Brogger, and I'm here today with Randy Lawrence. Randy, thanks for being with us.
Awesome, man. Super excited and pumped to be on the show. Man, we've got some awesome things that we're going to share with the listeners, and so could be life-changing, praise the Lord, if they're really dialed in.
Could be life-changing, so tune in, get ready. Yeah. Hey, why don't you start out by telling our listeners who you are and where you're from?
Yeah, so I'm based in Florida, Tampa Bay, kind of Clearwater Beach area. My background is a 15-year money manager, Series 7, 65 stockbroker, registered investment advisor. Sold our company in 2006 because I saw the power of what real estate could do as an asset class and investment class. We started our private equity real estate company in 2003. So the last 18 years now, we've been focused in that. We presently have about 175 million in assets under management, primarily focused in apartment complexes. We still have a residential company that probably has flipped about 1,000 houses in that time period, does about 75 houses a year. And then, of course, the Real Estate Preacher podcast. So we're preaching all things real estate. Praise God. There you go.
Love it. Extensive history. And I love the multifamily aspect. So we'll definitely dive into that. But first, you mentioned briefly what got you into real estate in the form of, you already being in the investment world. But what was like your first exposure to real estate?
Yeah. So, God, if you go way back, but I bought a duplex as my first property in '99. Funny enough, I grew up a mile down the street, and way back as a kid, a buddy of mine lived there. We used to ride motorcycles, and his family lived in one side. So, all those years later, 15 years later, Here it is. I bought this property, and when I bought it, I'm looking at it. I lived in one side, but I rented the other side out. But I began to look at the mechanics of the investment component of it too, because I was at the time a stockbroker. And so my degrees in finance, economics, and I'm like, holy crap, when you started to look at the actual returns and then the risk profile, and then I looked at the portfolio I was managing, and it's like, wow, it's just night and day different. I mean, off the chart better. And, and then it's especially like I was living there almost free, right? The tenant was paying the mortgage, and I'm like, wow, you can't get much better than this. So that really just created the appetite for sure.
I love that. Yeah, great story. And, previous to that, to get that idea to buy a duplex or rent the other side out, did you read like Rich Dad, Poor Dad in the 90s, or was there a book or something that influenced you for that?
I think it was just the degree, finance, economics. I took a couple of real estate courses, and again, commercial real estate. It really kind of, exposed me to that. And I recognized just the value of what it could be. And so that kind of began setting me on that journey. And then I thought, hey, if I'm buying a house, why not have somebody else pay my nut? You know what I mean? And that was the duplex. Now, a guy I met at church, he also was a mentor and influencer. They owned about a couple thousand doors, and they started off with buying 40-unit like duplexes, townhome stuff. And so that also was an influencer, because here I'm having coffee with him. They now got a couple thousand units just raking it in. And, that also was part of that seed. So again, quality mentorship always pays off. And so for the folks that are listening to the podcast, like, you're doing yourself an A service, because that's oftentimes how those little seeds, those golden nuggets, what I said in the beginning, life-changing piece can be dropped in your lap, and it can sprout the seeds that just grow and change your life, man.
Absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more. So let's touch on action items for success. That's what this podcast is all about. And I would love to know your single most important action that you've taken on a daily basis in order to achieve the success, or however you measure it, where you're at today.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the books that was instrumental, I'm a huge reader, but Jim Collins' Good to Great. The book talks about the 20-mile march. And it also talks about the flywheel concept. And so, a professional that day in, day out, regardless of how you feel, right? Too oftentimes people are willy-nilly moved by feelings. And it's like, so our thing is, we're committed to do what we're doing on a daily basis. discipline in, whether we feeling good. Some mornings I'm fired up, other mornings not so much, but we're executing on it. And then we've determined what is our 20-mile march. What are we going to accomplish year over year over year? And then no matter what, we are focused singularly on that activity. And so I think, for the listeners, everybody's in a different space, but it's like, what is your singular focus accomplishment that you're going to achieve? And then now you've backed it down from the annual to the quarterly to the monthly to the daily. And then it's like, come hell or high water, you are going to do that day. And, there's Stephen Pressfield wrote a book, Turning Pro, I think it is.
Turning Pro. I was going to bring it up if you didn't bring it up.
Yeah. I mean, what a great book, because it's like, he's telling, and again, it's like, all right, you piece of crap, get out there and do it. Right. You know what I mean? Kind of thing. Now he's not saying it like that, but I'm like, you got to execute, man. And so that's the game changer. Tony Robbins talks about too, the 2 millimeter difference. And it's like, that also is, by just that extra effort every single day, compounded over time, yields monster success. And that really, I tell my team, that's the differentiator.
Turning pro. So doing the work. Once you have done the planning, the strategy, you identified what key productivity indicator you're going to focus on, whether that's phone calls, whether that's appointments booked, whether that's, whatever it is. Yeah. Doing the work to generate that result.
Funny, it reminds me, just so you say that, right? And this would be great for the folks listening. My early on stockbroker manager, so he's the sales manager, right? Okay. Christmas, terrible time. It's like production falls off the cliff because everybody's focused on Christmas. And this guy's a great dude, Italian guy, kind of New York kind of guy. And he's like, I won't say it how he said it because, again, we're on the air or whatever, but he's like, come on, you piece of crap. His production was the best in December, right? Everybody's grinding and moaning. And it's like, hell, man, I'm doing client reviews. I'm upselling products. I'm, using that time productively. And everybody else on the sales thing is like, oh, Christmas is bad. And you know what I mean? They didn't, make that the plan. And so from that point on, I took that and I'm like, you know what? No, this is going to be an awesome time of year. So we've always, even in this arena here, December, we crush, right? Because now you're going into the next year strong, but it goes back to figuring out what you just said. Is it going to be your calls? Is it going to be this? And then just executing on it and doing it, man. I mean, that's really the secret, man. The secret is you got to be willing to put the work in, bro.
It's probably the single most powerful skill that I've learned. And I learned it from trial by fire with a direct sales commission only job right out of high school. Oh. And they told me, sit down, make 100 phone calls, and based on your percentage of commission and your career sales, you'll make this much money. I was like, how do you know that? How could this possibly be real? Right? Yeah. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. And when this fails, I'll show them that I did the work and it didn't work. But guess what? I did the work and it freaking worked.
And it worked. And
so it's like, once I realized that, my confidence in my earning ability was never the same. I was never then capped by a ceiling, by a salary, by a hourly wage. Now all of a sudden it's like, whoa, sky's the limit. If I can do that, focus on key productivity indicators, leading indicators, actions I can just chip away at, boom, 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 and tie my emotions to that. If I made my 20 calls and that's the number, feel great about it. Because if you tie your emotions to the results, then you get on that roller coaster.
For sure. Right? Yeah. And that's
get all excited with that commission check.
Yeah, you got to tie it to the activities that you're doing, the variables you can control. And you got to be honest with yourself. Like when Chuck was saying it, the sales manager guy, I had to look back, right? I'm like, I'm partying and doing all this stuff. And like we go out to 4:00 happy hour, snack, cocktail, free, whatever at the thing. And like 6:00. And then you're like, really not that motivated to go back and make calls. And it's like, as a stockbroker, I mean, 6:30 to 8, that's the window when the people are home. Back in the day, I mean, good Lord, this is in the 90s or whatever. So, but if I was honest with myself, a number of those days, all right, we went out, it's a Wednesday, happy hour at Chili's or whatever it is. And, 6 to 8 didn't really materialize that strong. You know what I mean? And I'm like, it's 7. We'll get it tomorrow.
It's one day.
It's one day. What's it matter? It's like, no, man, that's not a pro. And
that's everything.
I had to be honest about those things. And I remember the Pareto principle, 80-20, huge, right? 20% of your activities are going to generate 80% of your results. It doesn't matter what industry, what anything, church, volunteer organizations, everything. I made up this plaque that typed up, and I wish I would have kept it. I threw it out when we moved in office like 2 years ago. And I'm like, but I used to have it set right next to my phone, right? This 8x10 standing there like that. And it was 20% was, new prospecting, existing client reviews, it outlined the 3-4 activities that it's like, you do that every day. And then the 80% was down here. That's like, that's the crap stuff that doesn't generate. And I had it right next to my phone because I'm having to make those calls, man. It was before the robo dialer days that we have today, man. And the Excel, like, is old school. Here's your paper and your list. And
that's your CRM, that piece of paper.
Yeah, exactly. That was it. So yeah. Considering how it is today.
So let's talk about multifamily real estate investment.
Yeah. Oh, man, dude, it is, when you step back and look at the, single family, multifamily in an objective way. And again, that's my background is, pragmatic investing. Lord willing, you should be non-emotionally engaged as a money manager, but pragmatic investing. And then you look at the variables, the tax efficiencies, the leverage, multifamily beats the single family hands down. And I had probably 44 doors at one time. I think we're down to like 3. So anytime somebody would move out of house, I just sell the house. There's tenants that have been there 10, 12 years or whatever. They finally move out and we just sell the house because the net returns, maybe say 7-8% is best on cash flow in the area we're at. And there is some appreciation in your apartment community. You can get a much higher return because you've got the leverage of 100 units. You've got a 30-year fixed debt that's, government back supported at 3.5-4% in today's market. You've got the driving costs down by having an on-site manager and an on-site maintenance. And the beauty of it, you don't have to have any pain in the ass phone calls from a tenant 10 o'clock at night with your house where the toilet's backed up and all that kind of stuff, So, and then the kind of the cherry on top is the tax advantages of the depreciation, because when you look at the apartment communities, they're primarily built of 5 and 15-year components in a much greater way than the 27-year-and-a-half depreciable items. You can front load all that depreciation into the first 5 years. And then the tax law change from 2 years ago allows you to take it all in the first year. Some people go, oh, but the bonus depreciation is going away. It's because you're a rookie and you don't know the truth. The truth is bonus depreciation, cost segregation really has always been there, but it was over 5 years is kind of the normative of the law. But so what that means is you can get income and then as a real estate professional, because of the depreciation, not pay tax on that income because of the offsetting depreciation. That should be the life-changing seed right there.
Powerful. And a few podcasts ago, we talked about it in more technical terms of $60,000 a year and writing off this and but in simple terms, that is amazingly just simple and brilliant. It's like, if you're an active real estate professional and you don't have some multifamily assets that you're writing off massive depreciation every year, you're missing out.
You're missing the boat, right? It's like the God's golden gift right there and again, now step back from any excitement level and then compare that. All right, hey, I'm killing it in my stock portfolio at 18%. Okay, but I'm paying X on tax on that. And then look at what I'm getting here in the multifamily and paying 0 on that. It's like when you sit down and do the math as a real estate professional, what you just said, you absolutely should have that component in your mix. Now, part of the problem is, though, a lot of times guys, gals will outgrow their tax professional, meaning they're starting to take moves. Hey, you worked with John down the street, and John, he's more of an order taker. Here, give me your stuff. Okay, pay this, instead of a forward-looking tax strategist. And so when guys have gone to that guy, they're like, I'm not sure about, they just don't have maybe the acumen. And I've seen that many, many times with clients that invest with us. And so it's always like, hey, as you're upping your game, you need to surround yourself with people that have the same caliber of game so that you can keep moving down the court.
Such a good point. And I've experienced that myself. I inherited my own CPA from my father who used her, and she does all of our family's taxes. And now it's at the point where they're so complex that even she said, you need to go get someone else.
Wow. Right. Thank God for an honest person, right? Like that's,
Right.
I mean, I see that so many times. And, and just as a point, if your person is like, here's my stuff, and then they come back and say, oh, you owe X. I'm telling you now, you need to look at another person because you want somebody that's helping you to advance plan. Here's the moves you can make to reduce that X.
Yeah. And I'll be asking you for a referral after this. So,
for sure, man, for sure. But we got some good people.
When it comes to, multifamily real estate investment, I think the big problem with real estate professionals that are focusing on residential is that they're so engrossed in the single family and 4 units and under that it's almost too much to think about. It's overwhelming to think about getting into a deal with 100 doors as an LP, right? Being a limited partner, and I don't know what's happening. And so in your real estate investment experience, how are you helping to coach people through that decision? Like what services are you offering? What's the shtick with the real estate preacher?
For sure. I think, and that's a confused mind. It's easy, just boom. No, I'm not doing that. You know what I mean? And so I think what we try to do is, and I recommend to people is, one, get a clear and the basic understanding of how the component and the pieces work so that they can understand like that. Because again, most people are not going to go from selling real estate and maybe owning a couple of houses or a duplex to then bam, buying a 100-unit place. It's just more complex than
outright.
That. Sure.
Yeah.
Just, you can't do it. It's, plus even to get a loan with Fannie Mae, you got to have a track record. And if you haven't done it, so there's a whole kind of network of, so to speak. But I think it is that you have to be willing to first learn the basics. And so we try to help people learn through our podcast, but also through our sales process where, we have investment success managers where we walk people through education of, how it works, what it looks like. It's not really, hey, we get our investments filled because we've been doing it for so long and we've got such a track record that just like Chris, referred us and talked about us, many other people that way. So somebody investing 200 grand with us, like quite frankly, I don't need them to invest 200 grand with us for us to be successful. So genuinely our mission is about helping those people become successful. So we try to educate them on the basics of how it works so that they can understand the simplicity of it, then also understand the timeline commitment. Because again, usually these deals are 3 to 4 years in commitment. You've got to have a certain level of liquidity so that you can participate and not have need to access to that money. Then also understanding the benefits in a simplistic way, right? So that it's like, okay, if I'm investing this, what's my expected return? What's those tax benefits look like? And that really can be achieved in a very simple 30-minute webinar that we do, or a 30-minute phone conversation one-on-one that takes place with one of our success coaches. And that's where it can change the trajectory of someone's life permanently. Like if you go to my website and there's one person on there, she's on there, Diane, she talks about, she's invested with us for 18 years. It's changed her life for 3 generations. Like it put 2 of her kids through college during the economic crash of 08, 09. It kept her business afloat in the retail furniture business. I mean, good God, people were losing their houses. They weren't even buying furniture, right? And then she was able to sell her business later and put that money with us. And it was able to take care of her mom who died of Alzheimer's. But it's like, that's exciting, man. 3 generations of a family was changed for the better forever because of the education she got 18 years ago and then the decision she made. And it's important to understand who you're with, because that's one of the things I think sometimes where people have a serious trepidation about. Because again, on the internet, there's so much, people can say and do, hey, they're a rock star, but like 6 months ago, they were working for AT&T. You know what I mean? Like, and I've seen that literally, like the person's forgotten to put on their profile that they're still a business manager at AT&T. And it's like,
yeah, now they're the foremost expert in the field.
Yeah, for sure. It's crazy. So I think, you got to have that understanding of who it is you're working with, but then be willing to invest. I mean, look, just like you said in the beginning, right? You're not going to get the success you want in your business if you don't put in the work. You're not also going to get the success in your investing career if you don't put in some work. And as a 15-year money manager, most people, honestly, what they would do, they'd come to us and like, hey, John, the doctor friend of mine referred me to you. I got $2 million. And, we wouldn't let them invest with us unless they paid $5,000 and created a financial plan. That was kind of a hurdle to make sure they're serious. And then they would just be like, oh yeah, that sounds great. We'd try to educate them, but they didn't really fully understand everything. And they're like, okay, I want to just move it from this brokerage to your firm now, based on just the trust level, but without really a deeper understanding, because, well, everybody's doing it. And so I think that's a disservice to yourself to not participate in the understanding.
Yep. I have a story to share about that. Recently, everyone's getting into stocks, right? Since the spike and the drop during the March 2020 market with the initial fear of COVID-19, and then the surge afterward, it seems like everyone and their mom is on Robinhood trading.
Oh, yeah.
And so I have been talking to some people that do know a little bit more than the average Joe. And one of them, his uncle, is a 15-year, 20-year investment broker. And, he said, hey, I'll send you his picks. And I said, that'll just feed me for a day.
Yeah.
What's his process?
Mm-hmm.
And so he sent me, an email with this 3M philosophy and this whole thing. And I was like, that's the meat. That's what I want to learn as a human being in order to set myself up and my future generations for success. Because then I can go do it myself. I can implement it. I can give it away and teach it to others. And it's so much better than just hey, here you go. Here's $1 million.
For sure. Well, and you just said it too, is then you're able to pass that on to future generations in your family, right? I mean, and that's huge, because then now you're empowering them to be educated and successful. It's like, my daughter's 17. She works one day a week in the office underwriting apartments. But I help her to explain, that if you can learn and master the concepts of money and then also real estate, regardless of what you choose to do in life, you're going to be light years ahead, because those things drive virtually everything. Everybody's living in a house. Everybody's got to deal with money. And it's like, that's so critical. And so you should, as a listener, be like, I want to learn more about that, because I want to not only empower my own success, but I want to be able to do just like you said, and empower my kids, my lineage, that's coming after me, so that they're even more successful.
Absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more. And when it comes to multifamily real estate investment, there are a few pieces to the puzzle. Myself, I'm a commercial broker. I should say agent. I'm a commercial agent brokered by eXp, and I focus in California on 5 units and up, and nationwide on deal sourcing, because my unique value proposition is that previous to this, I owned a social media and digital marketing agency specifically for real estate lead generation. And so one of my unique advantages is the ability to discover off-market listings. And so I leverage that. But when it comes to financing, when it comes to deal structure, I lean on partners like you to help with those things. And so I want to focus a little bit on right now, deal sourcing. When it comes to finding deals, what channels are you going down to find deals either on the market or off the market?
Yeah. So most major MSAs, you probably find that when you're dealing with the larger assets, 75 to 300 plus unit complexes, those translate to, $8 to $40 million transactions in most markets, depending on the market and the pricing. Probably, 80% of those transactions are transacting through a select few brokerage firms, just that specialize in that type of asset class. Now below that space, there are, mom and pop sellers. But again, based on our focus, we're focusing on the broader, bigger marketplace. And so we have relationships with those key brokerage firms that realistically, you pull CoStar, they move 80% of all the product that's moving in that area, between those three. And so we have, in any market that we're in, we by design are an executor. We are a guy that when we go in and we shake on it for, $15 million, we don't turn around and retrade you and try to ask for $1 million off for some BS reasons that aren't true. We make it very seamless. We're, just by design, it's like most people are like, wow, that was the easiest deal I've ever done. These guys are amazing to work with. And then also the volume that we've bought has engendered us to be like a go-to person, because again, even as a broker, it's like your goal is to sell the property so that you can, one, benefit your seller, but also two, get paid. And so that's realistically, we've become that person. So we're on the short list. We're the number 1, 2, 3 phone call that any of those guys would make for the specific thing we're going after. So we're C plus, B minus, value add. There's a very specific type of asset that we go after. And then so with that, we get probably almost half our deals off market, where again, a seller is like, hey, I've bought this for, 8 million. It's now worth probably, 16 million. They've owned it for 10 years or whatever it is. And if I can get 14 and a half, 15, I'm making money like a truckload as is. I ain't got to mess around with it. I ain't got to recap it and put more money into it. I can just walk away with a $6 million check. Boom. He's talking to his number one guy. They're then in turn being like, hey, Randy. And, we're also, because of our team, we're able to turn that thing around usually in about 24 to 48 hours, which is an unheard of type of analysis timeline, and be accurate. And that's by design. And so then, that's where we've gotten, good Lord, we just closed a just under 250 unit deal that was just like that. And we turned it around in one day, 24 hours. From the phone call at 10 a.m., by noon, I had somebody on site driving around, taking photos. By 4 o'clock, I had all the analysts' primary work done with our team and CoStar, the whole bit. By 9 a.m. the next morning, I've got a true tight, my boys overnight looked at it on the finances. And then by like 9:30 a.m., we're talking, we could genuinely pay this number and close in this time frame. And we got that deal. It was a monster deal. I mean, now I need, $2 million worth of renovation because it's been, bled out
deferred
over
maintenance.
10 years. But most people in this space would not probably be equipped to turn around that fast. But
yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, we've designed it like that so that we can succeed. We have what I would say is like, and again, think about this for your own business, as you're listening. We know our singular focus, and then we've designed everything to excel at that, right? So somebody's coming at me like that. By the time they got their gear in second gear, we're already done that next morning at 9:30. So they're still jerking around trying to figure something out. And it's like, boom. And that's the true thing. We had another group out of Miami because the seller was, out of state as well. And that group was trying to like, well, we could pay more. And it's like, dude, here's this guy that owns right across the street, and it's in writing, and they'll really perform because these guys are the real deal. And they're like, all right, who cares about that? Let's go with the real deal.
Yep. No, that's super powerful. I love your singular focus. And, back to the original question of sourcing deals, you, through service as an investment firm, have attributed the reputation to the firm to where you have incoming broker calls all the time. Just on a platter. Here it is. You guys want it.
For sure. And again, now I had to crawl through the mud and fight through the jungle to make that happen, right? Like I had to, when going into a new market, talking to the guy, he's sending us some crap deal that like, you can tell it's crap, but and then before we had a team or whatever, as I'm entering a new market, I want to know it all. So I'm doing it. And then, I hand it off to our underwriter, whatever, but like I'm doing the work so I could go back to the guy and be like, dude, here's the reason that it doesn't fit with our criterion. And then you do that 4 times. And then now the guy's handing you a deal that's, okay, a marginally or at least a good deal. And, a lot of people, again, going back to the original premise, they're not willing to put in the work, right? They look at it and go, it's a crap deal. And it's like, yeah, but you didn't put in the work to show the guy you're serious.
Right.
And so they're never getting traction. And that's, even think about the listing and the retail side of things. Like that's the thing, right? You know what? Like if you put in the work and you're singularly focused, you may not get that immediate payoff. But it's a universal impossibility. If you plant the seeds, the harvest will grow. It's just, that's the law of the universe. Mm-hmm. And so, if you know what crop you're looking to grow, then you did figure out what seeds you got to sow to get there. And then you begin sowing those seeds. And so that also goes back to that flywheel concept. When you push, and then that thing starts to turn, the velocity of it starts increasing and increasing and increasing. Most people give up before the wheel ever really turns because it's just so much work.
Right.
Now the issue is we've got so much good stuff coming to us. We've got to have more, team members doing, bandwidth. So.
Interesting. Yeah. So there are different problems at different phases, right? Different obstacles to overcome. And, in the beginning, when you're crawling through mud, it's, man, I can't find a good deal and this and that. And now it's like, I have so many good deals. We just need to be able to quickly sift through them, get back to them, get the financing locked in. Like, it's almost come full circle to now you're sitting back and responding, where there was so much, energy going out to get the flywheel going.
For sure.
But now that it's just humming along, you basically just got to like grease the bearing.
Yeah. Because once the flywheel, and I recommend the listeners to really look at that book, read that section for sure. Because once the flywheel starts spinning, it requires less effort to, it's just that you're greasing the wheel, but by the momentum of it, it's now going. And the same can be said for your top retail agents. It's like, once you get that momentum going, now the momentum is going. And man, John Maxwell calls it the big mo. It's like, that's like, man, it's really starting to create its own energy. But how many people really put in that much work before they see the result? I mean, I would suggest a lot of people, man, they quit before they ever see the fruits of those labor.
Yep, absolutely. I was just thinking, I wonder how many people have truly experienced that. An analogy that I equate it to is the analogy of a rocket. Mm-hmm. A rocket uses 90% of its fuel to escape Earth's atmosphere. So good. And then once it's in Earth's atmosphere, now it can remain in orbit for decades on the remaining 10% of fuel.
Look at that. That's beautiful. Right? Yeah, that's a great analogy, man. And the funny thing is, like, you've got to believe that, right? Like, and so you hear you saying it, you hear me saying it. And it's like, there's, guest after guest after guest that you've had on the show saying it. It's like, it's because it's true.
Right.
And these people are living that out because they've experienced it. So then the folks that are listening, it's like, you know what? That's what I got to do. Even if you haven't experienced it, your belief is leveraged off of our belief, our experience, our testimony. Yep. And it's like, well, good Lord. And I thought, man, if that guy can do it, like, surely I can do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's an element of that in it as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, standing on the shoulders of giants.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
So, listening to this podcast, trying to think about the listener, it's easy to just check out if you have been working hard and you haven't hit that stride yet where the momentum is working for you. So, how has a failure or an apparent failure set you up for later success? Do you have like a favorite failure of yours?
Yeah. I mean, I go back to 2008, and the just overall economic meltdown in this country. We had been prior to that, probably, I think, admittedly less than strategic on some of the assets we acquired here locally in Florida, because in Florida at that time, I mean, it was like white hot. I mean, similar to like what it is now, but like, so you just had to get what you could get and don't throw a fit, right? It's like, all right, I got this here and got this there. And there wasn't the scale or synergies that was needed. And then when things just went off the cliff, I mean, Florida, good Lord, it fell off the cliff overnight. I mean, it slowed down in 6, 7, and then 2008, it just boom, like a falling, just right off the cliff. And now the other thing is we had a lot of D areas, which again, because that's what you could get, right? And some of those places just got crucified, man, because like whole neighborhoods here in Florida just went ghost town, foreclosure. And so I had to fight through that, and we successfully navigated through it. None of our investors over that 18-year period lost any capital or lost any return. They all made their money. Now, I got crushed, no doubt, just because that was part of the difficulty of going through that. But one of the beautiful things was learning and just being honest and true. I had not been strategic. Because if I'd been strategic, I wouldn't have bought some of those assets looking at the longer game plan. And so that's where going through that fire really refined me to become super strategic in the decision-making and how we move. And so now, like realistically, we're making 25-year decisions in our business. And so when we're looking at an asset, I'm not so moved by what it looks like, here in this next 24 months. I'm looking at it, what it is, 3 years, 5 years, how that asset fits into our long-term 25-year company plan. And that is where we can be singularly focused and successful. So I think being strategic and being disciplined to hold to that strategy is so key, because shiny object syndrome really gets a lot of people, man, right? You see somebody on Facebook or Instagram, oh my God, they're killing it over here. And you're sucking wind, having to just march through this march. And most people like, ooh, if I could just do that, maybe it'd be easier. It's a fallacy, man. And so I've been able to just hold to that strategy, stick to it very strategically, follow with discipline. That's not very sexy, but the outcome of it is immensely sexy.
Right. Absolutely. Consistency is sexy. And I was curious when I asked you about your background, you mentioned that the real estate portion of the company started in 2003. Is that right?
Yep.
I was like, when I asked him about the failure, I wonder if 08 is going to come up.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, so tough for everybody. And, you know, I remember that time, even me just being the person who is in high school in the workforce. And I felt the increase in gas prices and, you know, the lack of opportunity. And that's what actually forced me into a direct sales position right out of high school, because they were the only ones hiring.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. If you can earn it on your own, then we don't have to pay you. You're
go for it. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. There's no downside for them. Yeah.
So,
I remember, well, it's just, you said that like the real estate agent licensees just cut in half, right? They just disappeared, man. Not only that, but investors disappeared because it was so difficult. And I remember this friend of mine, he was a real estate attorney, friend still to this day. He was one of the original investors in that first apartment complex in 03. And, you know, he told me, he said, Randy, because he saw what I was doing and navigating and all like that. And he was a friend and a mentor too. And he's like, Randy, as you navigate through this, he said, you're going to be light years ahead of everybody else with what you're learning through this process, because so many people are fleeing this market. And it's the difficult things. And he was right. He was true, because as we navigated through it, the skills that came from that navigation set us up for the immensity of the success we've been achieving. And so I look back on that. At the time, it felt like I was going through hell, man. I'm crawling through hell. But I would also tell you, it was one of the best things that ever happened to my life, ever.
Yep. I can say the same thing about that time. And it's really, really an interesting story in and of itself that we'll probably talk about at a later date. But I want to talk to you right now about your process for evaluating what to say no to. And there's probably all kinds. You mentioned the squirrel, like shiny object syndrome. I'm sure not only with just deals, but I mean, different companies calling you up. Hey, we can help you. Or, you know, so many opportunities. Hey, a really attractive speaking gig, but you got to fly away and be away from your family. Like there's so many things. So what's your process for evaluating what to say no to?
Yeah, so I'm very clear on my mission. I know exactly what my mission is at this stage of life, what I'm focused on accomplishing, the importance of my, you know, family for sure. And so I look at when these opportunities come in, you know, is it in alignment, number one, with my mission? And if it's not, it's a click, gone. Don't even think about it, because it's not my mission. You know what I mean? And so that's the first step, is getting super clear on my mission. And so for us, we're driven by two primary things in the business arena. One is transforming the lives of the residents that live in our community. And we're doing things that other people haven't done with empowerment programs and training and such like that for our tenants. And then the second is the transformation of lives with our investors, individual investors, that it can change their life. And so, and those two things are comprised in the C plus B minus apartments that we work on. And so as I focus on that mission, it's like, and somebody comes to me and says, hey man, Randy, I've got this amazing ground up construction project in Vegas. And it's a real example. And it's like, I didn't have to think about that, because realistically, that's an A-class community that's being built in Vegas to appeal to $2,500 a month tenant-based profile person. That's not who I'm focused on in our core focus at this time. And I also recognize, as a company system and scale, we don't have that systematized out at this time. And so that would require me to get bogged down in all these details over there. It's pulling me away from my mission. And so that's the number one thing that I look at there. And then two is, what is the impact on my time, right? And is it something that can fit within our system? If it can't fit within our system, then the next question is, will it become a system? And if the answer is no, then it's like, it's a probable no, because why should I put this energy and time into something that's a one-off versus a repeatable. That's the other thing I learned in that 2008 is just creation of systems, right? And so those are really probably the three main criterion that I look at. And I would tell you most things, it's a quick, fast process where I don't even have to belabor it because, all right, it's close to fitting into my mission. Is it a one-off thing? It's a one-off thing. Yeah, it's not worth it. And it fits into our mission. Okay, that's great. Is it within our repeatable process? Okay, yes, that's great. And then now what does it require of my time? Okay, now it's at least considerable. And then even in our deal analysis, we have built-in margin of this is what it's got to be a top-tier Prosperity Capital Partners deal. If it doesn't even hit that, our analysts kill it before it ever even comes to our team meeting. You know what I mean? So, and it kind of gets rid of a lot of the excess stuff because your bandwidth in your brain, really, you only can use so much, right? Like if you focus on everything, you really focus on nothing.
Right. And that's why I asked that question. Really, really solid answer. And I like the concept of, am I going to create a system around this or not? Because if it's a one-off, it's too much energy. But I think about that a lot. I've never really put it into words. But, if I'm going to take on a new client and it's a hyper niche type of thing, and it's like, am I going to duplicate this, and train on it and have my team implement it 1,000 times? Or is this truly a one-off?
Yeah.
Because that is a lot of energy to go learn something new, go learn a new language, go learn a new niche of this industry, like whatever it is. It's so much energy to go become the expert that you need to be in order to execute at the high level in order to make that profitable. And so, man, if you're going to do that once, that's a no. And that's a really good way to put it. I like that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I think, you said something earlier, like standing on the shoulders of giants. And it's like, learning from people that have gone ahead of you. And that's critical, right? Because I get it. When you're maybe in the running and gunning stage, like even as a young stockbroker, dude, you'll take anybody, man. Like you'll just like, but the reality is you're hurting yourself because you're not focusing in that repeatable process. And so even at a high level, it's like as a successful person, you don't want to leach out over here and do this one-off thing because now you're abandoning this focus. And it took me quite a while to get to that place to think that way. And I would suggest to the folks listening, that's key, man. The faster you can get to that place of looking at and being systematic in your approach, the faster you're going to get where you really want to go on the success tree.
Yep. Couldn't agree more. And, I've already enjoyed this conversation so much. I'm curious if there's a question that I should have asked you or anything that you'd like to elaborate on from earlier.
Yeah, man. And no, you've done an amazing job of just kind of unpacking the thing. I think that, I would encourage the folks to take action. That's one of the biggest things that I think people hurt themselves by not taking action, like trying to, okay, I gotta learn everything before I move forward. It's like on certain elements, you need to move forward and get the ball rolling. It's easier for God to move a rolling object, right? If you're rolling forward, you can be steered a little bit easier than if you're just sitting still. And too many times people like, oh, I was listening to your podcast for 3 years and then like, dude, like maybe you should have took action after 6 months, Right. But yeah, I think just focusing and asking yourself what areas and being honest with yourself, what areas have I not taken action that I really know I need to, right? Mm-hmm. I think at Amazon, I studied Amazon, Jeff Bezos, their threshold is like 70%. Go, boom. Now my threshold's probably still at about like an 80, somewhere between 80 and 85, depending on the thing. And I think a lot of people, they've not trained themselves to go at 90%, 85%. I got to get all the information. I'm at 98%. It's like, hell, now the opportunity's gone, right?
Yeah.
Like
analysis paralysis.
For sure. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think that's whatever you're doing, that's the ticket, man. I love when I look at the Bible, I see a couple of things like I look at, even Christmas, the story of Jesus' birth, all that stuff. But like, you look at like, God's talking to, and maybe if God's talking to you, take action, I guess, right? But he's talking to Joseph. It's like, hey, take your kid and go to Egypt. And like you read the next line, he arose and went to Egypt. And I remember I read that and I thought, that's who I need to be, man. Just like go, boom, action, right? Hey, I need to do this. Don't belabor it. Just boom, go, move forward.
I listened to a video this morning about different stuff, passion mainly, but it talked about the vertigo of freedom. The paralyzing experience when you have essentially unlimited choices and then staying in action. And it's so powerful. I mean, when you were talking about that, it brought it up. It's so important to get into action. And that is really the purpose of this podcast is, even this podcast right now is a distraction from you going out and taking action. So, great close there. I really appreciate the focus on action and action activities.
Awesome, man. Well, great to be on. So glad to be here, and hopefully, Lord willing, brought value to the listeners.
Absolutely. How can listeners contact you?
Yeah, so you can connect together with us at our website, pcpre.net. That's for our company, Prosperity Capital Partners. Again, pcpre.net, or you can check us out on our podcast, The Real Estate Preacher, and connect through the podcast as well.
Fantastic. Randy, Lawrence, everyone, thank you so much for being here, Randy. Really appreciate all the insight that you dropped today. I know
awesome. My pleasure. My pleasure. You have an awesome day. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. If you want to accomplish your real estate goals, then I highly suggest downloading my free Ultimate Real Estate Goal Setting Framework. The link is in the description of the show, and it will help you break down your annual income goal into the amount of phone calls, appointments, or open houses you need in order to achieve that goal. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.